The quantum transmission matrix exploded in a cascade of purple sparks, and Queen Zara watched in horror as centuries of Neptunian communication protocols dissolved into chaos. Her translucent tentacles rippled with anxiety-induced bioluminescence. The first human diplomatic vessel would arrive in exactly 17 minutes, and their primary means of translation had just self-destructed. "Your crystalline majesty," Chief Scientist Vilor's voice wavered, their normally stoic demeanor cracking under pressure. "The Matrix's neural pathways are completely scrambled. We'll have to rely on the backup system." Zara's inner chambers pulsed with deep indigo light, a sign of royal displeasure that made her attendants drift backward. The backup translation system was notoriously unreliable, especially with new languages. But they had no choice. First contact with Earth couldn't be postponed. The gravitational alignment wouldn't recur for another 847 years. "Initialize the backup," she commanded, her thoughts resonating through the crystalline chamber. "And somebody explain how our primary matrix, which survived 3 stellar wars and a supernova, chose this precise moment to malfunction." The scientific council exchanged nervous glances through their transparent bodies. It was junior researcher Kital who finally spoke up. "Your Majesty, we detected traces of an ancient virus in the system. It appears to have been dormant since the Great Schism, activated by our attempts to incorporate Earth's linguistic patterns." Zara absorbed this information while watching the approaching human vessel through the chamber's quantum viewport. The ship was remarkably inelegant by Neptunian standards, all sharp angles and metal so different from their own crystalline biotechnology. Yet it represented something unprecedented, a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel through purely mechanical means. The backup matrix hummed to life, its holographic interface casting strange shadows through the assembled Neptunians' transparent forms. Zara began reviewing the preliminary data on human biology their probes had collected. Her species reproduced through a complex process of mental energy transfer, creating new consciousness through the merger of multiple parent minds. The human method seemed impossibly primitive in comparison, yet had produced beings capable of matching their technological achievements. "Fascinating," she murmured, her tentacles curling in contemplation. "They experience physical sensations we cannot comprehend. Their bodies undergo dramatic chemical changes during emotional states." She paused at a particularly intriguing entry. "What's this term that keeps appearing in their physiological documents?" "Climax." The translation seems unclear. Vilor floated closer to examine the data. "The backup matrix is struggling with context, Your Majesty. It appears to be some sort of mythological concept related to their biological functions. Perhaps a religious experience? The references are contradictory." Warning lights suddenly flashed throughout the chamber. The human vessel had initiated docking procedures ahead of schedule. Zara quickly composed herself, her form shifting to the formal reception configuration. All 12 tentacles arranged in the traditional pattern of welcome, her crystalline core pulsing with the dignified azure light of monarchy. The airlock cycled, and for the first time, Neptunians came face to face with humans. Ambassador James Chen led the Earth delegation, and Zara's scientific curiosity immediately overwhelmed her diplomatic training. Humans were so solid, so definitively shaped. They didn't flow and shift like her species, and their emotions didn't manifest as visible light patterns. How did they even communicate? "Welcome to the crystalline domains," Zara transmitted through the backup matrix. "We are honored by your presence." She noticed the ambassador's vital signs shifting dramatically as he gazed around the chamber. "Are you experiencing distress? Your internal chemistry appears to be fluctuating." Ambassador Chen smiled, a gesture that the backup matrix helpfully but confusingly translated as baring teeth in non-aggressive social display. "Not distress, Your Majesty," he replied, his words converting to telepathic impulses that felt strangely jagged. "Merely awe at the beauty of your world. Though I admit the artificial gravity takes some getting used to." Zara adjusted the gravitational field, watching in fascination as the human's postures relaxed. The backup matrix was struggling to maintain coherent translation, occasionally replacing words with bizarre conceptual approximations. When Chen mentioned looking forward to working hand in hand, the Matrix translated it as temporary biological fusion for cooperative purposes, causing several council members to emit shocked pulses of ultraviolet light. As the formal introductions continued, Zara found herself increasingly intrigued by these peculiar beings. Their language was rich with idioms that the Matrix couldn't process, their bodies were constantly in motion, and they exhibited an array of facial movements that seemed to hold vital communicative significance. "Ambassador," she ventured, her curiosity overriding protocol, "our preliminary research indicates your species experiences something called a climax. Our matrix suggests this is a mythological state of transcendence. Do all humans achieve this divine condition?" The sudden silence that followed was broken only by a strange choking sound from one of the junior human diplomats. Ambassador Chen's face underwent a remarkable color shift that the Matrix labeled as blood vessel dilation due to social discomfort. This was going to be an interesting first contact indeed. The holographic research chamber pulsed with waves of embarrassed magenta as Queen Zara reviewed the latest human physiological data. 3 weeks into the diplomatic mission, and she discovered her scientists had made a catastrophic error in their initial biological assessment. Humans didn't just experience emotional peaks. Their entire existence seemed to revolve around cycles of biological intensity that the failing translation matrix continued to label as mythological transcendence states. "Explain this immediately," she demanded, her crystalline form flickering between royal blue and confused purple. The scientific council hovered nervously as Chief Scientist Velor projected a series of human medical scans. "Your Radiance, we've noted that humans experience these episodes multiple times in their lives. They appear to be fundamental to their species' continuation, yet Ambassador Chen becomes remarkably evasive when questioned about them." A junior researcher chimed in, their form trembling with academic excitement. "According to our updated readings, these states can be triggered by various stimuli, physical exertion, emotional connection, even consumption of certain chemicals. The fascinating part is silence." Zara's command reverberated through the crystalline chamber. "Are you suggesting we've spent 3 weeks discussing a completely misinterpreted biological function during our diplomatic sessions?" The council's collective bioluminescence dimmed to an ashamed gray. Through the quantum viewport, Zara observed Ambassador Chen in the garden dome, apparently engaged in something called Tai Chi. The backup matrix helpfully but confusingly translated this as ritual movement to achieve transcendent state, which now seemed suspiciously aligned with their other translation errors. Her contemplation was interrupted by an urgent alert. The human delegation had requested an immediate audience regarding a critical cultural misunderstanding. Zara's outer layers crystallized with dread. Ambassador Chen arrived with his cultural attaché, Dr. Sarah Martinez, whose face displayed that curious reddening effect humans exhibited during social discomfort. The backup matrix, still struggling with nuance, translated her expression as approaching transcendent state, which only heightened Zara's concern. "Your Majesty," Chen began diplomatically, "it has come to our attention that there may be some confusion regarding certain aspects of human biology." Zara's tentacles twisted in scientific interest. "Indeed, Ambassador. Just this morning, our researchers noted your elevated heart rate during physical exercise. Were you approaching the mythological state of—" "Please," Dr. Martinez interjected, her voice strained. "That's precisely what we need to discuss. Your translation matrix has been interpreting a rather basic biological function as something far more spiritual than intended." The chamber's crystalline walls resonated with the collective embarrassment of the entire Neptunian court. Zara's own form briefly lost coherence, momentarily becoming a mortified puddle of transparent goo before she regained her royal composure. "Are you suggesting," she managed, her thoughts transmitted as carefully as possible through the temperamental backup matrix, "that the numerous research papers we've commissioned about human transcendence states are about something far more mundane?" Chen confirmed, maintaining admirable diplomatic poise. "Though I must admit, your scientist's paper titled Achieving Human Transcendence, a theoretical framework has become quite popular among certain Earth academics. The backup matrix chose this particularly awkward moment to crash spectacularly, filling the chamber with cascading symbols before rebooting. When it resumed function, it had somehow become convinced that all biological terms should be translated using references to ancient Neptunian poetry. "This is unacceptable," Zara declared, her form shifting through various frequencies of mortification. "The entire basis of our cultural exchange has been compromised by faulty translations. How can we proceed with diplomatic relations when we can't even properly discuss basic biological functions?" Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her expression what the Matrix now poetically translated as wisdom seeking light in darkness. "Your Majesty, if I may. Perhaps this misunderstanding offers an opportunity. Both our species have been too embarrassed to directly address these translation errors. In doing so, we've discovered something important about our shared capacity for dignity, respect, and yes, even humor." Zara's central consciousness pulsed thoughtfully. The human had a point. Their mutual diplomatic floundering had revealed more about both species' characters than any properly translated exchange might have achieved. Besides, Ambassador Chen added with that curious human expression called a smile, "I believe this incident has thoroughly disproved the old Earth saying about advanced aliens being beyond such biological concerns." The backup matrix translated this as celestial beings also ponder the mysteries of existence, which was perhaps not entirely incorrect. "Very well," Zara decided, her form settling into a more composed configuration. "I propose we begin anew with the understanding that some concepts may be lost in translation. Though I must insist we correct the academic papers. Particularly the one suggesting that human transcendence requires specific astronomical alignments." As the humans tried to maintain their diplomatic composure, Zara realized that sometimes the greatest understanding comes from acknowledging what we don't understand. Though she did make a mental note to review the other biological terms in their database. She had a sneaking suspicion that butterfly stomach might not actually refer to human metamorphosis. The sun set over the ruined cityscape, casting long shadows over the battlefield. Amidst the chaos, a lone figure emerged from the rubble, his eyes steely with determination. It was here, in this desolate place, that the final confrontation would take place, the moment that would decide the fate of everything. John's heart pounded as he surveyed the scene before him. The enemy's forces had regrouped, their numbers seemingly endless. Yet he felt no fear. He had faced insurmountable odds before, and this time the stakes were even higher. He knew that failure was not an option. With a deep breath, John tightened his grip on his weapon and stepped forward. His mind raced with strategies, each one discarded as quickly as it was formed. There was only one path to victory, and it required him to confront the enemy leader directly. As he approached the enemy lines, memories of his fallen comrades flashed through his mind. Their sacrifices had brought him to this point, and he was determined to honor them by seeing the mission through. Each step he took was a tribute to their bravery. Suddenly, a voice rang out across the battlefield, halting his advance. It was the enemy leader, a figure shrouded in darkness, his presence exuding an aura of menace. "John," he called, his voice cold and mocking, "do you really think you can win?" John met the leader's gaze, his expression unyielding. "It's not about winning," he replied, his voice steady. "It's about doing what's right." The leader laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the desolation. "Noble words," he sneered. "But nobility won't save you." Without warning, the enemy forces surged forward, their battle cries filling the air. John braced himself, his training taking over as he fought with everything he had. Each strike, each parry was executed with precision, but the sheer number of opponents threatened to overwhelm him. In the midst of the chaos, an unexpected ally appeared. It was Sarah, her presence a beacon of hope. Together they fought side by side, their movements synchronized as if they had trained for this moment their entire lives. "You're not alone, John," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We can do this together." Buoyed by her words, John found renewed strength. The tide of the battle began to turn as they pushed back the enemy forces, their combined efforts creating a path toward the enemy leader. Finally they stood before him, the battlefield eerily quiet as the remaining combatants watched in anticipation. The leader smirked, his confidence unshaken. "So you've made it this far," he said. "But this is where it ends?" John stepped forward, his eyes locked onto the leader's. "No," he said firmly. "This is where it begins." The final battle was a blur of motion, each clash of their weapons resonating with the weight of destiny. The leader fought with a ferocity born of desperation, but John's resolve was unbreakable. He fought not just for himself, but for everyone who had placed their hopes in him. With a final, decisive strike, John disarmed the leader, his weapon clattering to the ground. The enemy forces, seeing their leader defeated, began to retreat, their will to fight shattered. As the dust settled, John stood victorious, his chest heaving with exertion. Sarah approached him, a weary smile on her face. "We did it," she said softly. John nodded, his gaze sweeping over the battlefield. "We did," he agreed. "But this is just the beginning. There's still so much to rebuild." Together, they began the long journey back to their comrades, their steps heavy with exhaustion but lightened by the knowledge that they had triumphed. The crisis had been averted, but the work was far from over. As they walked, John reflected on the lessons learned. The importance of unity, the strength found in hope, and the power of standing up for what is right. These were the truths that had carried them through the darkest of times. In the end, it was not the weapons or the strategies that had won the day, but the unbreakable spirit of those who refused to give up. And as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, John knew that a new chapter was beginning, one filled with promise and the unwavering belief that no matter the odds, they would continue to fight for a better future.